When pulling a heavy box, what is the force from the floor that opposes the motion called? Frictional force. What is the phenomenon called when light converges or diverges as it passes through a lens? Refraction. Why does a chopstick look bent in water? Because of refraction of light. What kind of force acts on a current-carrying conductor placed near a magnet? Magnetic force. Why does water vapor change into liquid water on a cold surface? Because the temperature drops. Why do gases mix well with each other? Because of rapid particle motion. How do immune cells recognize viruses? By detecting antigens. Why does Mercury have almost no atmosphere? Because its gravity is weak. Why was Pluto removed from the list of planets? Because it has not cleared other objects from its orbit. What temperature characteristic do outer solar system bodies have? They are extremely cold. What are the main cells that make up the brain? Neurons. Why is the elongated shape of a neuron advantageous? Because it allows rapid signal transmission. What is characteristic about the arrangement of particles in a solid? They are arranged regularly. Why are solids and liquids difficult to compress? Because the spaces between particles are small. Why do plant roots have many root hairs? To increase the absorption of water and nutrients. How does Jupiter help protect the solar system? By blocking many asteroid impacts. What do we call a weather map with isobars that is used to forecast the weather? A weather chart. What property do elements in the same group of the periodic table share? Similar chemical properties. What do we call a substance that releases hydrogen ions when dissolved in water? An acid. When a metal reacts with an acid, which gas is produced? Hydrogen. What do we call a substance that dissolves in water? Water-soluble substance. In an ecosystem, what organisms convert light energy into chemical energy? Producers. Which layer inside Earth occupies the largest volume? The mantle. What is the shape of Earth's orbit around the Sun? An ellipse. What is required for sound to be transmitted? A medium. What are the three primary colors of light? Red, green, and blue. What particle has an electric charge opposite to that of the electron? A positron. In nuclear fission reactions, with what is the mass defect associated? The release of energy. In electromagnetic induction, the magnitude of the induced electromotive force is proportional to what? The rate of change of magnetic flux. What do you call a large block of ice that breaks off when a glacier flows into the sea? An iceberg. In which region do tornadoes mainly occur? The central United States. What is the main cause of tsunamis that occur in the ocean? Submarine earthquakes. What do you call magma that has erupted onto Earth's surface? Lava. What is the phenomenon called when a charged particle bends while moving through a magnetic field? The Lorentz force. What do you call the force at the moment when static friction reaches its maximum value? The maximum static friction. In a velocity time graph, what does the area under the curve represent? The distance traveled. On what does the brightness of a light bulb depend? The magnitude of the electric current. What is the main scientific principle that explains why a fan breeze feels cool on your skin? Heat absorption during the evaporation of sweat. What is the primary role of the cerebral cortex? Higher order thinking and processing of sensory information. What is one of the abilities in which artificial intelligence shows a particular advantage over humans? Fast processing of massive amounts of data. The phenomenon of tears flowing when you feel sadness is related to which specific neural action of the brain? Reflex actions of the autonomic nervous system. What type of galaxy is the Milky Way? A barred spiral galaxy. When dew forms, a gas changes into what state? A liquid. What does it mean when we say that living things respond to stimuli? They sense and respond. What determines how many electrons can fit into an electron shell? The shell number. How does the circulation of blood change when heart rate increases? It circulates faster. Open clusters are groups of tens to thousands of stars that are loosely bound by gravity. Where in a galaxy are they mainly located? Near the galactic center. Why are shadows formed? Because light travels in straight lines. What is the film called that allows light of only certain directions of vibration to pass? Polarizing film. When the state of matter changes, what happens to the number of molecules? It does not change. What is the process called in which eroded material accumulates and builds up? Deposition. Between viruses and bacteria, for which one are antibiotics ineffective? Viruses. What is the difference between an asteroid and a planet? Their size and orbital shape. Why can the brain transmit information so quickly? Because nerve cells are interconnected. Why does heart rate change depending on the intensity of exercise? Because the oxygen demand changes. In the periodic table of elements, which halogen element belongs to group 17? Chlorine. Within a single species, what is the process called in which genetic variation accumulates and a new species forms? Speciation. What is the chemical symbol of the element with atomic number 79, known as a precious metal? O. What is the name of the giant fault located at the boundary between the North American Plate and the Pacific Plate? The San Andreas Fault. What toxic gas is produced when carbohydrates and fats undergo incomplete combustion? Carbon monoxide. What is the phenomenon called in which the lengths of the seasons differ because of the Earth's orbit? Changes in orbital speed. Which organelle in the cytoplasm packages and transports proteins? Golgi apparatus. What semiconductor material is most widely used in solar cells? Silicon. Which gas makes up the largest proportion of Earth's atmosphere? Nitrogen. The Doppler effect is associated with changes in what? Apparent frequency. What is the main component of plant cell walls? Cellulose. Among vertebrates, what is the only mammal that can truly fly? The bat. How are the melting point and freezing point of a substance generally related? They are the same. What device generates electricity by using electromagnetic induction? Generator. What is the force called that acts toward the center of a circle and keeps an object in circular motion? Centripetal force. What is the process called in which nutrients move from the leaves of a plant to the phloem? Transloading. In a biological community, what do you call the space, food, and other resources occupied or used by individuals? Ecological niche. Why do cells continue to carry out respiration? To produce energy. Why can the nervous system respond so quickly? Because it uses electrical signals. Why is energy released in nuclear fission? Because mass defect is converted into energy. What risk is there if you do not warm up before exercising? Muscle injury. What does it mean to say that emotions can be trained? That emotional regulation skills can be improved. Why can the Andromeda Galaxy be seen with the naked eye? Because it is relatively close and large. Approximately what percentage of air is oxygen? About 21%. Among the visible colors of light, which color has the longest wavelength? Red. In which cell organelle does cellular respiration take place? Mitochondria. The surface temperature of the Sun is approximately how many degrees Celsius? About 6,000 degrees Celsius. What is the outermost layer of Earth that makes up the lithosphere called? Crust. What is the smallest fundamental unit that makes up an element? An atom. Which scientist first presented the theory of evolution in a systematic way? Charles Darwin. What do we call the proteins that catalyze chemical reactions in living organisms? Enzymes. Which structure is found only in plant cells and not in animal cells? The cell wall. What type of light does the ozone layer in Earth's atmosphere mainly absorb? Ultraviolet light. Which star in the northern hemisphere always points toward the north? Polaris. What do we call the long-term state of the atmosphere in a particular region? Climate. What do you call a landform created by the impact of a meteorite? A meteorite crater. What do you call the protective shield created by Earth's magnetic field? The magnetosphere. What do you call the scale used to measure the magnitude of an earthquake? The Richter scale. What do you call a pressure system in the northern hemisphere that rotates counterclockwise? A low pressure system. What do you call material that accumulates after rocks are broken down into small particles by weathering and erosion? Sediments. What do you call a body of air that has uniform temperature and humidity? An air mass. What do you call the process in which water vapor in the atmosphere cools and turns into tiny droplets of water? Condensation. What is the main principle by which a microwave oven heats food? Generating heat by vibrating water molecules. What principle does a wireless charger use? Electromagnetic induction. What technology does a self-driving car need to find its destination? GPS and sensors. What is the main advantage of drone delivery services? Access to remote areas. What technology restricts a drone to fly only within a specific area? Geofencing. What is the phenomenon called when iodine crystals are heated and turn into a purple gas? Sublimation. Which property is related to the reason cooking oil floats on water? Density. Among the components of air, which gas is inert? Argon. What is the phenomenon called when a drop of food coloring spreads out in water? Diffusion. Which substance is related to the reason a person floats easily in the Dead Sea? Sodium chloride. Which property is related to the reason a rubber balloon filled with helium rises into the sky? Density. Which purpose is related to adding chlorine compounds to swimming pool water? Disinfection. What is the innermost layer at the center of the Earth called? The core. What is the phenomenon called in which sea level rises and falls due to the gravitational pull on Earth? Tides. Granite and basalt belong to which type of rock? Igneous rock. What is the path called along which the Earth revolves around the Sun? Orbit. What are the small particles formed when bedrock at Earth's surface breaks down called? Sand. In which type of rock are fossils most commonly found? Sedimentary rock. What is the bright flash in the sky accompanied by thunder called? Lightning. Which type of solar radiation is absorbed by the ozone layer in Earth's atmosphere? Ultraviolet rays. What is the force called that changes the direction of winds due to Earth's rotation? The Coriolis effect. In what state is Earth's inner core? Solid. Which phase of the moon corresponds to the full moon? Full moon. What is the deepest ocean trench on Earth? The Mariana Trench. During which lunar phase does the moon appear in a half-moon shape? First quarter. What is the highest mountain on Earth's surface? Everest. Which planet in the solar system has the greatest axial tilt? Uranus. What is the phenomenon called when light bends as it enters a different medium? Refraction. What do we call a material that conducts electricity? Conductor. What is the cause that changes the state of motion of an object? Force. What is the force called when two objects push each other away? Repulsive force. What is related to the pitch of a sound? Frequency. What is the state of motion of an object that is not subjected to any force? Uniform linear motion. What do we call a material placed between two conductors to prevent current from flowing? Insulator. Where is a magnet's force the strongest? At its poles. What is the invisible force produced around an electric wire called? Magnetic field. When light is separated into different colors, which color is bent the most? Violet. Compared with the object, how is the size of the image formed in a plane mirror? It is the same. When a wave travels, how does the medium itself move? It stays in place. When a magnet is broken into many small pieces, what happens to each piece? Each piece is the same as the original magnet. As the temperature of a substance decreases, how does the motion of its molecules change? It decreases. What do we call a substance that releases hydrogen ions when dissolved in water? An acid. What is the phenomenon in which the properties of a substance change and it becomes a different substance? A chemical change. What is a particle that has become electrically charged because an atom has lost or gained electrons? An ion. Which organ in the human body purifies the blood? The kidneys. What is the largest organ in the human body? The skin. What is the process by which cells break down nutrients to obtain energy? Cellular respiration. What is the closest star to Earth? The sun. What happens when sunlight passes through a prism? It is separated into the colors of the rainbow. The reason an object floats on water is related to what? Buoyancy. What happens to the volume of a steel ball when it is heated? It expands. How does the North Star appear to move over the course of a day? It appears to move very little. Why is mercury used in a mercury thermometer? Because it has a large thermal expansion. Why do day and night occur on Earth? Because of Earth's rotation. How is the speed of light in water compared with that in air? It is slower. Among the visible colors of light, which has the longest wavelength? Red light. What principle explains how a vacuum cleaner sucks in dust? Difference in air pressure. In which season does static electricity form most easily? Winter. Why does a straw look bent when it is placed in a cup of water? Refraction. What is the name of the cell organelle in animal cells that produces energy? Mitochondria. What is the tissue that connects bone to bone called? Ligament. What is the phenomenon called when roots grow in the direction of gravity? Positive gravitropism. What is the substance that contains a cell's genetic information? DNA. Which glands in the human body produce sweat? Sweat glands. Which part of the human ear detects sound? The cochlea. What color does litmus paper turn in an acidic solution? Red. What do we call a substance that dissolves in water to produce ions? Electrolyte. What ion is common to all acidic solutions? Hydrogen ion. Why is Earth's gravity stronger than the Moon's gravity? Because its mass is greater. Why does ice float on water? Because the density of ice is lower than that of water. What is the property of a solution with pH 7? It is neutral. What is the longest bone in the human body called? The femur. What is the name of our galaxy? The Milky Way. How is the direction of electric current defined? As the direction in which positive charges move. What are the main substances that cause acid rain? Sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. What is the most abundant element in the universe? Hydrogen. What is the boundary of a black hole called? The event horizon. When an acid and a base react, what two substances are mainly produced? A salt and water. What is the largest continent on Earth? Asia. What is the outermost layer of Earth's atmosphere called? The exosphere. Which blood vessels carry blood away from the heart? Arteries. What are the three primary colors of light? Red, green, and blue. What mainly comes out through the stomata of plant leaves? Oxygen and water vapor. What is the longest mountain range on Earth? The Andes mountain range. What is the approximate tilt angle of Earth's axis of rotation, in degrees? About 23.5 degrees. Which cells in the blood transport oxygen? Red blood cells. If two objects with the same mass are dropped, which one reaches the ground first, neglecting air resistance? They reach the ground at the same time. Which seismic wave travels the fastest? The P wave. What is a star called when it ends up as a very small, extremely dense object? A white dwarf. What happens to the freezing point when sugar is dissolved in water? It decreases. How are left and right reversed in an image seen in a mirror? Left and right are reversed. At what time of day are meteor showers usually seen most clearly? At dawn. What is the main structural component of the cell membrane? A phospholipid bilayer. What phenomenon discovered with the Hubble Space Telescope provides evidence for the expansion of the universe? Redshift. Where are the antigens that determine blood type located? On the surface of red blood cells. What do we call a power plant that obtains energy from nuclear reactions? A nuclear power plant. Approximately how many muscles are there in the human body in total? More than about 600. What is the force called that holds water molecules together? Hydrogen bonding. What materials are comets mainly made of? Ice, dust, and rock. What is the reproductive organ of flowering plants? The flower. What do we call a very rapidly rotating neutron star that remains after a star explodes? Pulsar. In light interference, under what condition are bright fringes formed? When the phase difference is an integer multiple of the wavelength. Why do stars almost never collide even when galaxies collide with each other? Because the distances between stars are extremely large. Thanks for watching all the way through. Share your science knowledge in the comments. Your support helps us create even more science quizzes. See you in the next one.